Hi, everyone. My name is Serena LaRoche, and I am the current Mid-Atlantic governor for the Mid-Atlantic region. And I'm here today with Craig Allen from Winthrop University. We're thrilled to have Craig join us for a presentation as part of the 2024 Mid-Atlantic Conference and Students Auditions workshop and events. He's going to be doing a presentation today on the need for pop in the classical degree. Craig has been described as an exemplary soloist, and he has performed in theaters across the country. Um, he's been a soloist on concert stages in Italy, Bulgaria. He's performed with several symphonies and ensembles around the country as well. Um, for those who don't know him, he is also a very accomplished dancer and has had featured dancing roles in ballets, including Cinderella, Giselle, Nutcracker, and Snow White. He's also active in as a choreographer and is currently on the faculty at Winthrop University and pursuing a doctorate in vocal performance from the University of South Carolina. Craig, it's so nice to have you here with us today. We're excited to see what you've got in store for us. And I will stop sharing my screen and let you take it away.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here. And again, my name is Craig Allen, and I am from Winthrop University. And I am going to do this so that light's not in the background. It's going to be me and possibly my cat who might join us today. And I'm very happy to be with you. So let me share my screen and we can get started. Okay. So I will begin this presentation with a quote that I think encapsulates this entire presentation. This is from the Business, Music, and Opera News. Most now take the view that for musicians who hope to make careers in an increasingly competitive and rapidly changing performance world, an understanding of how that world works is crucial. And what I think that means is that we always have to keep our eyes open to what's happening around us and not continually doing what we have done before. We always have to continue to be adaptive and continue to change. So when I am talking about pop, I am talking about CM. And what is CM? First, when I say CM, I'm talking about commercial music. I am, for some of us, that is contemporary commercial music, but NATS has dropped the contemporary and not contemporary commercial Christian music, which is what I do on Sundays. And it is an umbrella term that encapsulates a lot of things. And for this part of the presentation, I'm going to focus on our musical theater friends, but for the vast majority of this presentation, we are going to be focusing on opera. The challenge with this subject lies in the fact that despite the increasing number of DMA students produced by our colleges, the job market in our industry is not heading in that same direction. For the purposes of this presentation, however, we are going to focus on musical theater. Recent research in acoustic pedagogical fields challenges the widespread belief that techniques rooted in classical voice alone can adequately serve the diverse singing styles found worldwide. Incorporating cross-training in the voice studio is not only crucial for overall vocal health, but also essential for sustaining music in academia. We need it to survive. In the 1990s, operas paid soloists sometimes up to $7,000 a night. Nice work if you can get it. However, after the events of September 11th, many opera companies suffered financial setbacks due to the economic crash. The industry is still in flux. In 2019, which is the slides we see in front of us, opera companies had budgets exceeding $1 billion. Yet they collectively earned only about $250 million. In contrast, 18 Broadway musicals collectively earned over $1.8 billion. It is important to note that these Broadway theaters operate for profit, while opera companies only rely on ticket sales, and I recognize that, but that is still a big difference. The necessity for a greater focus on CM styles in the classical studio is crucial for preserving music in academia, so that when we're graduating classical students, there are more job opportunities. However, there is a significant need for more hands-on study in this particular field. Mine is one of the few studies that I have found so far. Many educators argue that pop rock musicals are primarily limited to only Broadway, and that outside of New York, the majority of shows adhere to legit and traditional styles. They argue that mastering the styles is essential for singing all types of music, mastering the legit and traditional styles. However, this is not essentially accurate either. The ability to sing classical music and project over a full Wagnerian orchestra does not necessarily prepare you for using a microphone effectively without straining your voice. We do in NATS, for example, judge microphone technique for this exact reason. While they acknowledge the difference in sound, the techniques for producing these sounds are not always the same. For the purposes of this presentation, I will categorize these styles according how our musical theater industry describes the styles of these shows: traditional style, contemporary pop, rock, and legit. The legit term, however, is problematic. I just want to point that out. Legit is steeped in racism. It's a topic that I can talk about after the presentation, but back when the legit term was coined, I should say, it was coined because it was the Western sound and what they were doing down the street with the jazz sound and the more belting sound, that was not legit. Thus, the term was coined. But that is what the term the music theater industry uses. So for the terms of this presentation, that is what I'll be using. So legit refers to classical traditional style singing, such as Oklahoma. Traditional musicals, which a little bit different, is classical or jazzy sounds, such as 42nd Street or Chicago. Contemporary pop musicals include shows like Lion King, Little Mermaid, Wicked, while pop rock musicals are either jukebox musicals or heavily influenced by pop, rock, or Hairspray, American Idiot, or Rock of Ages. So here are the numbers. Equity tours, which represent the highest level of Broadway touring shows, consist of 72% pop rock and 38% traditional shows. Non-equity tours, which are less financially lucrative, serve as entry-level jobs for college graduates who are likely to get them, and consist of 58% pop rock and 42% traditional shows. Southeastern Theater Conference, SETC, where my school participated in auditions this last weekend, offer a mix of 50% pop and 50% traditional, reflecting the demand for both styles. UPTA's Unified Professional Theater Auditions, which would be something where a more seasoned professional would be going to, pop rock ends up taking up over a little bit more, 56% and 44%. Now, let's look back to Broadway in 2009 to 2010. where the lineup included 67% pop and 30% traditional, versus the most recent update, 2022 to 2023, where they were not quite back to their post-COVID numbers, but they were very, very, very close. They were 72% pop to 25% traditional. They are going more towards the pop side and less towards the traditional. The more professional, the more pop. The less professional, the more traditional. So a classical artist who wants to dabble in MT, or a crossover artist who is a little bit more classical, what do we do? If we fail to adjust our teaching styles for this particular student to prepare them for the realities of the pop music industry and musical theater, we will continue to set our students up for failure. The industry is shifting or has shifted without us, and it is crucial that we adapt our teaching methods to reflect these changes if we want our students to succeed in this particular side of the performing career. Simply focusing on classical music solely for this particular side is no longer sufficient. But let's look at this quote from Claire Chase, who invites young musicians to create new paths. Claire says, "We read daily about the implosion of orchestras, the winnowing number of jobs for expanding workforce. But far from dying, classical music is just being born," Ms. Chase said, "with new performance practices that put creators, entrepreneurs, historians, educators, theorists in the same entrepreneurial spaces. Well, I don't disagree with Ms. Chase, and I think she's saying some wonderful things. I take issue with just being born. History is repeating itself. We are making history again. We are not just being born. And what do I mean by that? Opera has always been influenced by popular music. That has been, or opera, classical music in general, has always had its hand with popular music. We have always gone hand in hand. So let's look at opera. Opera emerged as a transformative art form, born from the fusion of various art styles in the late 16th century. Modern listeners may assume that opera is fixed, a singularity on the historical timeline. I really like Prezi, by the way. If you haven't used it, it's a wonderful teaching tool. Historical timeline of music. However, the beginnings of opera represent a departure from the conventional theatrical performances and musical expressions of the time. Its origins trace back to the late 16th century in Italy, where the Florentine Camerata, a group of intellectuals and musicians, sought to revive the dramatic essence of the ancient Greek tragedies. A review of opera. But I love this quote. Despite the humanistic red herrings proffered by Peri, Caccini, members of the Camerata, and the others to the effect that they were reviving Greek performance practices, these gentlemen knew very well that they were basing their new reciting style on the I had a hard time with this word yesterday, improvisatory practices of contemporary popular music. Thus, the eagerness with which the humanistic myth was constructed and elaborated sought both to conceal the vulgar origins of its techniques and to flatter the erudition of its cultivated patrons. Atteel and McClary from the Political Economy of Music. Since its inception, opera has been inherently influenced by the prevailing popular music styles of its time. Early opera embraced elements of popular vocal and instrumental music from the Renaissance and Baroque periods, seamlessly incorporating folk melodies and street song into their compositions, endowing the art form with inclusive appeal to a broader audience. Composers adapted their music not only to engage the upper class, but the middle class as well. A man named Robert Cantrick, a composer and professor emeritus at Buffalo State College, observed a discussion of popular music that included non-Western music and the historical past, that everyone talks about popular music, but no one seems to know what that is. It kind of reminds me of me. I don't listen to the radio anymore. I just listen to podcasts. Throughout the various eras, different cultures may use different terms for popular music. Example, the French chanson populaire, in German folks. Another person, Bruno Nettel, a respected ethnomusicologist, explores these words to draw comparisons with the present-day Eurocentric and non-Eurocentric popular music. Nettel argues it's vital to perceive popular music as fluid concepts that evolve across cultures and timeframes, but still view it through the lens of contemporary understanding of it. In other words, popular music is popular music of the day. So we think of classical music with this bent that, oh, opera sounds fancy. But back in the day, it was just folk music that sounded folky, but with orchestra behind it. So we have to remember that when we're teaching our students, we need to meet them where they are. That's what they did back then. That's what we should do now. During the Baroque era, opera eagerly adopted the infectious allure of popular dance. Composers such as Handel integrated these popular elements, catering to the sensibilities of the general public. The popular music influence in the Baroque and even into the pre-classical eras and the Middle Eastern court melodies can be attributed to their reliance on established structures and semi-standardized ornaments. In the classical era, opera experienced a profound influence of popular music, and this trend continued into the Romantic and modern eras, giving rise to the works that embrace contemporary music styles. I'm focusing on Haydn right now, but Salieri and Soler integrated popular music elements into their operas, resulting in captivating and innovative compositions. As you see here, let me just move my face real quick. You see the Croatian folk song, and then Haydn put it into an Austrian hymn. Let's listen to that for a second. So, as illustrated above, and I found it in the folk music and art music, a discussion and theory, it becomes evident that Haydn and numerous contemporaries utilize folk music as a foundation for his compositions. By embracing the melodies and themes that resonated with the general populace, people who liked the music, Haydn was not merely borrowing, he was connecting with everyday people by using the musical language that they could relate to. Modern Broadway musicals have been doing this for years, like the jukebox, like the jukebox musical approach. This is nothing, the jukebox musical is nothing new. History is repeating itself once again. So this doesn't feel like a history review for those of you who have passed your DMA long time ago and you don't want to do comps again. I think it might be a little fun to focus a little bit on something that popular music did in terms of politics. What popular music also did was it gave the rise of feminism and gave women power as well. So what I mean by that is um, the prima donna had a profound impact, notably in 1800s Paris, in the world where the coloratura soprano held commanding positions on the operatic stage, perhaps for the first time rivaling their male counterparts in earnings. I'll get to my point in a second. Just to put that in perspective, a typical first singer, a coloratura, would earn anywhere from 25,000 to 40,000 francs in a year. Yet, excuse me, a first singer, male, yet a prima donna would make a 25,000 in a single night. To illustrate that further, a teacher in a year would only earn 500 francs. Things don't change. $1 in 1800s would be an equivalent purchasing power to about $24 today, an increase over $23 in over 223 years. That implies that a prima donna could earn 620,000 francs in just one night. This musical influence coincided with the rise of the feminist movements in France. Excuse me. The opposition to the rise of the feminist, the opposition to the rise of feminism in some circles, the influence of Napoleon's views on women was profound. Despite the ruler's impact of large swaths of French society and countering other efforts to silence diverse female perspectives, this period saw a notable increase in female voices in music, particularly in opera, because of the popularity in the prima donna's rise and the bolero in dance. The popularity of the bolero and the usage of it in with the prima donna and the ability for them to do it while singing was so popular, they were able to use that influence and make a lot of money while doing it. So what we're going to listen to is Nathalie Dessay singing Meyerbeer's song. Oh, I should not have done that. So we're going to. So let's see how we're doing. Cool. As we continue on, as seen above, the waltz-like rhythm accompanies the virtuosic nature of this piece. On top of the coloratura, which lasts in this section for more than 3 pages of the 7-minute work, this work was also meant to be danced. In the 1800s, most opera manuals did not detail how singers should act during songs. However, in the manual Le Pardon de Bormel, they instructed the lead character to dance a waltz during her shadow song, and even recommended the choreography beforehand with the choreographer. This demonstrates an effort to integrate a dominant popular trend of the era into the framework of the opera. So what you're telling me is they asked singers to dance while they sang. So musical theater didn't do it first. History is repeating itself once again. And we're going to listen to it again and go on. So, in conclusion, for the Romantic era, witnessed a deeper fusion of popular music influences into opera and dance as well. And these lesser known works exemplify the creativity and innovation of these composers during the period, from the integration of religious hymns and folk melodies to the incorporation of national themes. These operas showcase the enduring impact of popular music onto the time period, commonly referred to as the classical era to those who don't study music for a living. Moving forward. So, what about today? In the 20th century, we are continuing to evolve, embracing diverse musical styles and popular music elements. I would like to focus, before we move on to living composers that I've interviewed, I should say, I'd like to just spend a couple of seconds with Benjamin Britten's Paul Bunyan and just listen to a little bit of the folk elements that happen in that. So in Benjamin Britten's Paul Bunyan, the integration of blues, folk songs, and the hymn structurally reshaped his classical composition. Blue elements introduce the emotive depth, adding a raw and speech-like tonal quality that's not typical for his genre in this particular opera.
Cold in the north came the blizzard to say, I left my sweetheart at the break of day. The gold ran out and my love grew gray. You don't know, sir, you don't know. The west set the sun for enterprise. A bullet in Frisco put me wise. My last words were, God damn your eyes. You don't know, sir, you don't know.
Now, depending on the singer, you can tell who is being more folky with their performance and who's being a little bit more classical with their performance. And I find that just interesting as a listener, who's being influenced by the music. Another person that I studied as well, just because of time, I am moving a little bit more forward, is Powder on Her Face by Thomas Ates, who has more cabaret elements that is coming through, and it's very fascinating opera if you have not listened to it. So listening to these three operas, excuse me, on this particular page, we're going to start with, where am I? Where we're here. In contemporary operas, composers have been increasingly exploring the fusion of classical music with elements from popular music genres, including hip hop, for example, to hip hop, blues, gospel, and particular singers that they want to be influenced by. Three examples that I'm going to be talking about is Harriet Tubman, 600 Square Feet, and The House of Orpheus. Harriet Tubman, When I Crossed That Line of Freedom, is a powerful opera that tells the story of Harriet Tubman, whose work to being enslaved to freedom through the Underground Railroad. In Kiru, score combines classical elements with the element of gospel and jazz, infusing the opera with a rich and diverse musical tapestry. The use of gospel and vocal delivery adds a contemporary and compelling dimension to the narrative, reflecting the strength and determination of the protagonist. Here is a little bit of Harriet Tubman. So before we listen to Nikiru's 600 Square Feet, which is not heavily influenced by popular styles, it does feature a moment 5 minutes into the 16-minute or so opera where the soprano was instructed by the composer specifically to have her Whitney Houston moment. Specifically, I know it's Whitney Houston because I interviewed the composer. This illustrates how knowledge of popular styles and popular singers is important and is influencing operas today. See if you can hear it. So right there at the end with the riff, as I like to call it, she definitely had her Whitney Houston moment and was coached by the composer. Edmund Ford's House of Orpheus is a groundbreaking production that fuses opera, house music, and house music is a genre of electronic dance music, and gospel into a captivating and modern retelling of Orpheus, set in the near future. This production delves into themes of identity, love, and resilience as Orpheus strives to save Eurydice from his father, Pluto. One of the things that I want to mention before we get started, and this is going to take me a little bit of switching of screens. As I pull up the sounds, take note of Edmund's versatility. This is something that I just noticed today or yesterday. Wonderful, wonderful composer. I also interviewed him for an hour, and beautiful mind if you ever have a chance to meet him. But also, I had no idea that he sang multiple roles on these recordings. So the role that you will be hearing of Orpheus and Pluto and Atlas are all sung by Edmund. So we're going to be listening to just a little bit of the arena and a little bit of another piece.
No wrong, I've caused no harm, I'm innocent, I swear. I've done no wrong, I've caused no harm, I'm innocent, I swear.
Tell my father his mistake. I'll show the error he has made, and surely he will disengage.
My friend, your father
Die
will not
today. I swear you will not die today. My father.
So that's one piece I'd like us to listen to. I have, as I'm continuing to dive into this piece a little bit more, I haven't quite figured out the best way to describe this piece, other than amazing and awesome. I think I have landed on TikTok opera, because here is another piece from the same opera.
Non quiero più, perché il sole non lucida e la luna non è più bella. Non quiero più, perché l'erba è meno verde e le stagioni ora più non cambiano.
The versatility that this gentleman has is just stunning, but also it contains numerous examples of fusions of styles. This score includes gospel, jazz, hip hops, and multitude of, obviously, classical elements. In Slow Burn, which is the last piece that we're going to listen to in this opera, there's, I hope you can hear a 4-bar bass line, harmonic progressions that's repeated throughout the duration of this piece. The score plays mostly electronic instruments that's supported by a drum track throughout, addition of muted trumpets and strings that further the jazz elements, and the vocal line is answered by solo instruments. And that's the last piece we're going to listen to in this work.
All I can do, I have done. The choice I make, I must make alone. Gone into the unknown, for nevermore will I see my home. No matter what it takes, I gotta play your game. Like an arrow in my heart, I can't escape this pain. I think I'm going insane. All I can do is to speak her name.
So, back to presentation, which will take me a second to get to, I think. Wonderful, wonderful singer, and still makes my head explode a little bit with the versatility in the abilities that man possesses. And then we ask ourselves, but who does that? Opera Carolina just presented that last summer. Opera companies are doing these works. So we need to have our students be able to do these, be able to do this if we want them to work. So the last opera that I want us to talk about is kind of going down the line of where I think some of us are going already. I Dream is by Douglas Tappan, a fully through composed, selfly described opera based on the life of Martin Luther King. It premiered in July 2010, and it's a rhythm and blues opera. Provides a unique perspective in Dr. King's life. Through a series of dreams, reminiscences, and premonitions, the opera explores the conflicts and challenges Dr. King experienced while leading the civil rights movement. The song I Dream combines rhythm and blues with classical opera elements, while also drawing from popular contemporary musical theater styles. And that's a big caveat there. The fusion creates a poignant and emotionally resonant portrayal of Dr. King's struggles and triumphs. I had the privilege of being in this opera with Opera Carolina a few years ago, and some of the personal anecdotes are mine. So let's listen to a little bit of this and I will discuss. Oopsie daisy. There we go.
Childhood, the good times, the bus ride. Today, such a long way from there. You have come to the Jordan. You've shown the way forward. The people can take it from here. I'm so proud of your work, grandson. Well fought and well done. You've shown them that love is supreme. You have done your life's work. I see people, mighty people, beginning to dream. Worlds of people beginning to dream.
Well, of course. So that juxtaposed with the advertisement for this was profound. Opera Carolina put a lot of money into investing in the show, rightfully so. It was a beautiful, beautiful show, and we performed at many different places. I did not perform. I was a chorus person. Was Martin Luther King's doctor. I did have a name role in the show, but this happened as well, and it was really neat.
Scared to bleed. Come soon, no, don't come, never come. Now turn things around. Come on, come bring the magic that I need. Hey. Will it always be this way? Will the places light up and never change, oh Lord, like the color of my skin? Will it always be this way? Will it always be this way?
Let's hear it for I Dream. I Dream will open at Opera Carolina in April. Get your tickets at aisle 36.
Brought the house down every single, get off my screen. Brought the house down every single night with those high notes. But mic'd. Quite a lot of the characters in the show were mic'd. Some of them were not. I have not been a part of an opera experience, musical theater experience, performance experience, where some of the performers were mic'd and some of them were not. And it truly was a experience in hybridity. And that was neat in that way. However, there was part of this show that felt like its identity was also being found. Is this a musical? Is this an opera? Google it. If you are around a computer, you will find different answers. Douglas Tappan himself calls it a rhythm and blues opera, and sometimes he describes it as a musical. The leads in the show currently is on Company. The Broadway tour was a lead in Phantom. And then some of his wife is generally one of Opera Carolina's mainstays, sopranos or mezzos. Lucia Bradford is an amazing mezzo and does a lot of classical work. My job right now is not to analyze the show and try to figure out what it is, but the things like this are also being created, and our job as teachers is trying to figure out how do we train our students to be able to be cast in this. And what we want to be able to do is give them the tools to be able to wail and know how to use a mic, so that if presented with, I want you to have a pop style, go ahead, you would be able to do so. My role in particular, I was being coached one day to be more classical and one day to be more pop, because they couldn't decide which one they wanted for my particular role. So one of the questions in the chat, I already kind of taking and analyzing here real quick. I think our job is to possibly maybe delete a Bach cantata and add a pop lighter song to learn that style and delete that style instead, to help move us towards the future, because these are the songs that are being written for today. So moving forward. So, which brings me to my next point. How will the students handle it? I'm excited to share you the findings of a study that I did. I did a study that essentially, let me just do that, asked about 50 students these questions, which was introducing I did a study which introduced pop songs to students who were primarily focusing on classical music in their voice lessons. I was not the only teacher involved in this process, but I was the primary teacher in this process. I employed a survey to collect data from classical singers who had recently begun or had been singing for a while, had recently begun singing pop songs in their voice lessons. The singers ranged in singers who had recently begun singing classical music who had been singing for a long time. The survey consisted in open-ended questions, including one that specifically asked participants' initial reactions to singing pop songs. Going through these questions quickly: name, age, and gender. How long have you been taking voice lessons? Voice classification. What did you feel about pop music? We're going to talk about the data analysis here in a second. Prior to singing pop songs, how familiar were we with the genre? did singing pop songs help you develop new voice techniques? If yes, what did you learn? I'm going to stop here for a second. A thematic analysis was conducted to identify recurring themes and patterns in the participants' answers. The analysis focused on recognizing common sentiments, emotions, and perceptions expressed by the participants. I did this study, before I continue on with questions, in a emotions-based and not scientific-based way. I was very much more interested in their feelings and wanting to go that way. Mary Saunders Barton, emeritus of Penn State, and I were discussing this when I was developing this survey. And she basically said to me point blank, "You're not going to become a scientist overnight." And I realized that I did not have the equipment to scope every individual student to look at their speed of their vocal folds at the beginning of their study and at the end of their study. And that was not how I was going to be able to show the results. So I was really only able to look at the feelings and how they felt their range was doing and how their practice was after they did their studies. I'm going to go on with the questions now. What was their initial reaction to singing pop songs only after singing classical music? Did you notice any physical differences in your body while singing pop songs? Did you feel more relaxed or tense when singing pop songs compared to singing classical music? Did you feel more freedom to experiment with your voice when singing pop songs? Did you feel more emotionally connected to the lyrics of pop songs? Did you find it more easier or more difficult to stay in tune when singing pop songs? How did this study influence you? How did your level of expression change while singing pop songs? Did you notice any changes in your vocal tone in your classical songs or quality of singing your pop literature? Do you think singing pop songs has any benefit for classical singers? The reverse question: how would you like to incorporate more pop songs in your repertoire? What advice would you give to any other classical singers who are hesitant to try singing pop songs? And this was the results, basically. There was an excitement and openness to change. Many participants who expressed excitement and enthusiasm when introduced to singing pop songs. This is Alexander. You can see a little blurry behind me. They viewed it as a refreshing change from their usual classical repertoire, showing readiness to embrace the new challenge. There was an initial concern and uncertainty. Some participants revealed initial concerns and uncertainty when faced with singing pop songs. Their concerns included not being familiar with what counted as pop music and fearing a lack of emotional connection with unfamiliar songs. Perception of technique and vocal health. Participants noted differences in technique between classical and pop singing, such as how to change the inside of their mouth and where to focus their voice. These differences felt new and at times a little weird, and overall they found an enjoyable and to explore new and vocal techniques. One musical theater student called it lame because he didn't particularly like the pop song that I gave him, but we were able to find rep that he enjoyed. Freedom of expression and emotion. Participants expressed feeling more relaxed and emotionally connected when singing their pop songs. This sense of freedom allowed them to express themselves more openly in their classical performances, which I found to be a win for both sides. Comparison to their musical theater or other genres. Participants described pop singing as its own unique challenge, offering a more relaxed and contemporary style compared to musical theater. They found it to be a welcome change of pace and a fun challenge to accomplish. Based on the findings, voice teachers should, I think, consider incorporating pop songs into classical singing training to enhance vocal versatility and freedom of expression. However, it is essential to address concerns and provide guidance if you don't have them. And the dissertation that I'm writing, I do have some literature to ease transition between genres if you do not have the training. Obviously, NATS also has a lot of repertoire for that available. So, what now? In conclusion, the landscape of the music industry, opera, musical theater, pop, and the like, is evolving rapidly. While classical voice training for me has been the cornerstone of my vocal education for my entire life, it is no longer enough to prepare students for the diverse and dynamic world of commercial music. The rise of pop rock musicals in the musical theater world, and that's the primary of my students that I teach at Winthrop, and the shift in audience preferences, as I indicated at the beginning of this presentation, highlight the need for a more comprehensive approach to vocal training. It's imperative that educators and institutions adapt their teaching methods to include cross-training in commercial music styles. This not only ensures the health and versatility of the voice, but also equips students with the skills necessary to thrive in the competitive industry. We would not approach Wagner the same way we would approach Bach. So why were we asking students to approach Wagner the same way that we would approach Whitney Houston? By embracing this shift and providing students with a well-rounded education that encompasses both classical and contemporary styles, we can empower the next generation of performers to succeed in the challenging musical landscape. The future of music education lies in our ability to embrace diversity and innovation, preparing students to meet the demands of a rapidly evolving industry. Do we have any questions?
Hi, Craig. Thank you so much. This was very informative and some really interesting background information. I personally had not thought about it the way you had mentioned it, and someone else said that in the chat, said that it's a different way to think about adding popular music into vocal instruction, assuming that art music will develop and begin to incorporate pop anyway, which obviously from your presentation, that's already happening. There's another question for teachers that are interested in dabbling into assigning a pop song or two. What do you feel are the things to consider, and how should one identify the repertoire to use?
I think the things to consider is the same thing that you would consider when you would consider an art song. Range, ability to handle the style. You can listen to a pop song and see are they able to handle the pressure on the voice. There's a lot of, like, look at Taylor Swift. She has an immense amount of repertoire, and some of her repertoire doesn't have a big range. Some of her repertoire has a large range. You can just go ahead and start listening and finding the rep that fits the student and fits the student's voice. And have fun with the lovely thing about pop music is that you can change keys on music notes just like you can with musical theater and art song in general, and find what fits the right song and what fits the student's pedagogical needs of the time.
Okay. Ayumi Nakame wants to know, where may I get this clip by Neiman Ford?
Sorry, Google. I will be happy to put it in the chat. Well, no, I won't. Yes, I will, because I'm in the chat. So iamorpheus.com /media.
Keely Phillips Carter says, do you think using pop can also give students who haven't been exposed to classical a bridge toward understanding music?
100%. Yeah. I think there's so many, we use folk song to try to get students to understand classical music. And I think it's the same as I demonstrated with some of the classical artists using folk music in the back of the day. I can't see why pop music is any different.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, some pop music is virtuosic in nature, and if we're having a beginning baby student, we might not want to introduce them to a riff-tastic song. But finding a pop song that they might enjoy, country is pretty good for that. But I grew up in Texas, so but finding a song that they might enjoy that is easier for them to learn, absolutely.
Yeah. Wonderful. I'm not seeing any more questions in the chat. Thank you so much for being with us today, Craig, and thank you for taking your time with us and sharing your insights on this very relevant topic right now. We thank you, and we thank everybody for joining us today for the workshop events. We do have tomorrow a masterclass happening, and you'll be able to see Craig featured as a clinician on that virtual masterclass. That's Monday, March 18th at 6 p.m. Eastern time. And we'll see you right back here on our new YouTube channel. Thank you so much and have a great night.